Before I begin the interview, I'd like to quickly say that my first feature-length horror film, The Philip Experiment, or How to Conjure an Imaginary Ghost, is funding right now on Kickstarter. In 1972, the Toronto Society for Psychical Research had a question. What would happen if you tried to summon the ghost of someone who never existed? Let's find out together. Go to thephlipexperiment.com to learn more and support the movie. That's thephlipexperiment.com with one L. Now, on with the interview. Welcome back, pod people. My guest today is Adam Newman, the writer-director of Everwinter, a horror comedy that I really got a kick out of watching. I thought something that was particularly interesting about this one is that it almost splits the horror and comedy into like separate parts of the film, that the first 2/3 or so is almost entirely comedy, and then the last third or so is almost entirely horror. So I know that the shoot on this was pretty unusual. I read a quote from you saying the shoot was unlike anything we had ever done or heard of before. After one 12-hour shoot day, we had to go back to our rooms to write the scenes for the following day, trusting in the story that we had assembled only days before and in the talented cast and crew that stuck with us through it all. So tell me how that came about.
Sure. It wasn't what we planned, that's for sure. What happened was we were going to make a very, very different movie, which oddly enough had the same name of Everwinter Night, but it was going to be a sequel to a very quiet family crime drama that we were going to be making. We were very excited about doing it. And this was right at the height of, or actually it was probably towards the end of COVID. And we were trying to meet the SAG guidelines so that we could film this movie. And as we were getting closer and closer to the shoot, it became pretty clear that we weren't going to be able to make it based off of what SAG was asking of us. And so the night before, we kind of said, all right, we just lost, a third or a half of our actors for this movie. What are we going to do? But we had plans already, and we had locations, and we had costumes, and we had all these different things. And so what we said is, hey, it's going to be the most creative endeavor that we've ever taken up. But maybe we try to write an entire feature in a weekend and then go and film it. And so that next day, people started showing up, and we were cork boarding out a new idea. Luckily, I had some notes from some old stories, and this is kind of the one that stuck. And so we spent probably 8 hours boarding that out. And then me and my co-writer, Chris Goodwin, we started writing it the next day, about 36 hours before we were going to go and shoot. And so he wrote forwards and I wrote backwards, just based off of this cork board. And we probably have 50 or 60 pages done. Yeah. And so we probably have 50 or 60 pages done by that Monday. And then what we would do is we started planning how to shoot that. And we told the actors, man, you're going to have to trust us. We're really going to trust you here, and just believe that we know what we're doing. And we would write after shooting, after those 12 hours of shooting, we'd go back to our rooms and we'd write the scenes for the next day and try to piece together a story. So it's not something that we wanted to do, but it ended up being an experience, to say the least.
Yeah. So you said your partner was writing forward and you were writing backwards. So does that mean that you were focusing more on the horror aspect and your partner was focusing more on the comedy aspect, and then where you meet is the sudden change? Or
I wouldn't say quite like that. We did go into we wanted it to be a horror comedy, that's for sure. I am probably a little bit more into horror than he is. He writes really good banter, and as you can, as evidence by the movie, we started forward and backwards, but that doesn't mean it exactly ended up that way. There's that opening stinger which he wrote, and then the next scene, and then the next scene that took place with all the girls at the diner, which is one of the opening scenes. I wrote that one, so we did kind of have this mix and match. I do like to say if something was funny, it was probably Chris who wrote it, and if it was the babblings of a cult, it was probably me. We tried to work it out so that there's a nice blend, and we did have to come back for reshoots so that we could really make sure that that story did piece together. We wanted to sprinkle horror in, that's for sure. There are a couple days, the movie takes place over the course of a long weekend. And each of the days, we wanted a horror element to be there to, kind of give you a slow burn, so that when we built up to that final act, it at least made sense that it would happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely yeah, I don't mean to imply that the horror came out of nowhere in the last
Sure,
act. I just thought that like if you removed the last act and removed a few other things like that opening stinger,
sure, sure.
it could have just been a straight comedy.
Oh,
Um,
certainly. Oh, certainly. And we wrote to it was Chris's strength is writing comedy banter, and both of us love character driven stuff. There's a lot of directions we could have gone with the movie, that's for sure. But we're kind of happy with the balance that we did strike.
Good. Yeah, so this was sort of improvisational in the sense that you were like writing the script as you were going. What sort of things changed over the course of like did you get inspiration as you were writing and go, "Oh, well, we found this sword. We got to put this sword in," or something like that? Or
I mean, there were certainly props that we had that were for another movie, so we were like, well, we're gonna have to find a way to get these into it. The sword being obviously one of them as well. Um, there wasn't a ton when that happened, though. It's amazing how close we did stick to our board, because that's how we're used to writing. We corkboard everything out in note cards, and so we had a pretty good feel for it. There was on the reshoots, we did have to come back, and there was some connective tissue stuff that we kind of missed because we were doing a first draft on the fly. So we just wanted to make sure that those pieces were spruced up a bit, and that everything felt fluid and like a coherent story, and things like that. I think the only thing would have been that maybe we started going down directions with characters based off the actors. Some of these people were people we've worked with 1,000 times, but some of them were new. And so we wrote their particular characters away. And as they started taking that character, we kind of went along with them and let them kind of take control of where that was going, although sticking still to, the corkboard that kind of was our king.
okay, yeah, I was wondering as well. Like, did any of them excuse me, did any of them improvise dialogue or anything like that?
Almost none.
Really?
No, for the most part, it was us having written that. Every now and then somebody would say, "Hey, what if I said blah blah blah?" Yeah, we'd go with it, for sure. There was a couple things in there that are based off of having a conversation with a person 24 hours before we wrote it. There's an actress in there named Alana Phillips, and she has a moment where she's spinning a gun um, behind a bar, and yeah, that's because she told us that she could spin a gun behind a bar. So it's there were some of those things, and we wanted to add it to the characters. So the characters are exaggerated versions of the people that that they play on screen. Those characters they're very similar to the personalities, I should say, of some of these actors, and so we tried to play along with that and just go a little bit more extreme in some circumstances.
Okay. You mentioned deliberately putting that stinger at the beginning, so that's kind of like, what if was that the first scene that you shot, or did you shoot it out of order and then edit that into the beginning, or
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I knew. I don't. I do really. It was a crazy experience. I don't remember what we did shoot first. I do know that the stinger was planned all along, though.
okay.
Um, I'm pretty confident it was not the first thing we shot, because the actress Chloe, who plays in that, is somebody we had not known until the movie had started shooting, and we said
Ah.
we need somebody to play this character. There's a little bit of a spoiler in that she plays a younger version of another character, and so we needed them to match up.
Hmm.
And so I'm pretty sure that we were trying to get her while we were shooting. So after hours, we would reach back out to her and be like, "Hey, can you make it, in 2 days to film this scene?" So I'm pretty sure we had shot some other stuff, but we always knew that it was going to be in there. We really like the idea of opening up 30 years earlier. We kind of like that opening scene that's very similar to the movie Vacancy, which we always talk about. And and we wanted it to feel something that could set up that horror element, because we knew after that that we were going to get into some of the banter, and we were hoping that people were going to remain patient with us through it.
Excellent. So, uh, talk a bit about why you chose to have that stinger at the beginning, because somebody that I interviewed recently, Charlie Steeds, director of Gods of the Deep, Freeze, Barge People, and a bunch of other things. He's a very
Sure.
prolific British low-budget horror director.
Mm.
And he talked about how he hates doing that kind of opening stinger, but the producers frequently insist on them.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and so I'm curious to get a variety of perspectives on this, because I've certainly noticed that as, a stylistic decision that a lot of movies make, but I had never really given it deep thought before, and now I'm really curious.
Sure. Well, that's interesting, because I don't think I've ever really done deep thought on it either. But even now, as we're talking, and I just came out of a shoot for our most recent movie, and we have a stinger in that one as well, an opening stinger that takes place hundreds of years earlier. So it is an interesting question. I think it's a really, really good way to set tone and mood very early, and to tease things, and so much of all movies are set up and payoff, set up and payoff. And I think with something like that, one, you get the banter that we're going to have. Two, you get tease the horror. And three, the tease is what makes people hopefully wanting to know more, So after that, that stinger ends, we're hoping that people are going, what happened to those characters? What's going on? What does that have to do with the rest of the story? And as we continue on, it's tucked in the back of their minds, it's sitting there going like, when is that moment going to come back? When is it going to come back? And eventually, hopefully, just as they've forgotten about it, all of a sudden that's when that stinger comes back and it becomes relevant. You know what I mean? So I think that's
Yeah.
probably why we do it. And I also, it just becomes like it's a short movie before, where you get to play around a little bit with the theme, and again, tease, 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 and so much of that is withholding information, and when you give information is such a big part of storytelling. So that's probably why I like it. But your friend you just talked about is probably a better filmmaker than I am, so he could probably do it a lot better in just the standard movie without a stinger.
He's certainly a very opinionated filmmaker, and I enjoyed the heck out of his movies.
Sure,
So,
sure.
um, so you mentioned setup and payoff being very important to filmmaking, and to story structure in general. Did you find that this unusual set of constraints that you were writing under made it more difficult or easier, or anything in terms of creating those setups and having them pay off appropriately?
Certainly harder than normal, just because as you're writing, most of the time when you have a script, I write 10, 12 drafts of it, and so most of the time when you go into it, it's fairly tight, and you feel like there's not a lot of fat here. There always is, but you feel like it's a lot tighter and it's a lot easier. With this, it's certainly a tightrope walk, and the setups we're hoping are going to work with the payoffs. It again, I hate keep bringing back up to it, but a lot of it is go back to the board and trust in the board and say like, we have this scene here and it's going to pay off here, and I know that we're flying by the seat of our pants and we still don't know the middle 30 minutes, but as long as that point gets to that point, we're going to be okay. And so, yeah, it is tougher, that's for sure. Because, like you said, there was a chance that inspiration takes over, and the story starts to shape itself a little bit differently than what you expected. But we tried to stick to our guns, and then that's what 4 days of reshoots is for as well, to kind of fix anything that might not have worked out.
Yeah. Okay. So how long was the shoot? You said 4 days
So
of reshoots.
yeah, so we did 10 days to start. Then we did 4 days of reshoots, and then we did one day of pickups. That was really just about getting some inserts and things like that that weren't, when we looked at the edit, we needed another day. So it was probably about that in between. It was the crazy part. It was about a year and a half between the principal photography and those 4 days of reshoots. And it was probably 2 or 3 months later that we did those inserts to finish it up. So total 15 days. Um, That's obviously not the way that you want to plan it. You want to shoot everything all the way out. But we only had the location for 10 days when we got it, and we had gotten more locations for a different movie. So we had to cut it where it was and kind of survive with what we got for those 10 days, which was probably about an hour and 10 minutes of the movie.
Okay. Oh, that's still quite a bit that was not in those 10 days, because it's an hour and 45 minutes long.
Yeah, people keep telling us how long it is. They keep reminding us that it's an hour and 45. We're very aware. Yeah, no, we a lot of it was stuff that was dialogue heavy when we came back, so that we could, there's some explanation that needs to go on, especially as we get into that third act. And really, a good chunk. There's a fight sequence, and towards the end of the movie, where we had written it out on the page, but we never got around to it. And so those were the things that we had to come back and do. We'd always like to, have more days to shoot, but we typically don't. And our script is it's 120 pages or something like that. So yeah, we're shooting almost 10 pages a day. And so, yeah, it probably was about an hour. It was an hour and 10 solid, that we had when we looked at the assembly before we went back, and then probably added another 35 minutes over the course of those next 4 or 5 days.
Okay. How long was there between the initial 10-day shoot and the 4 days of pickups?
It was about a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was quite a bit. I mean, since it sounds like we're going to dive into spoiler territory. There is one part where you will notice, if you pay attention, somebody's hair pretty dramatically changes. And
Oh,
if you look at the walls, the ski lodge which we shot the movie in, you will notice that the walls are a different color at one point. The fact that you didn't notice, I'm hoping you didn't.
did not
Hopefully,
notice. Yeah.
that's great. It means you were drawn into the story. Of course, we were ripping our hair out over it, and not a single person has noticed, except for every now and then a female will notice that the girl's hair got shorter. So that's about it, though. But
Interesting.
yeah, no, I mean, we didn't want to do it like that, but the assembly took a bit, wading through all that footage, and Chris, who was my co-writer and plays Eric in the movie as well, he was the one who pieced it together. And once we saw it, we said, oh, we have to come back, and there's a decent amount of dialogue that needs to be in here. And we did talk with our actresses, and one of them said, I'm sorry I cut my hair 6 inches shorter. And we said, well, nobody will notice. So again, not
Oh,
how you
yeah.
design it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Samurai Cop?
I've seen bits and pieces. I know of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know the deal with the hair in that?
I do not. No, I only know some of
Uh,
the ridiculous quotes.
oh yeah. Well, it's definitely worth watching. It's a very entertaining
Sure.
movie.
Uh,
And beyond just the famous bits that get memed on,
sure.
um, but the main character has like these really distinctive long black hair.
Mm.
And he, like, after the shooting wrapped, he got a haircut, and then 6 months later, the director came back and was like, okay, time for round 2 of shooting. I didn't tell anyone this ahead of time, but we're doing it now. And he's like, okay, but I have really short hair now. And the director's like, all right, well, here's a wig. And so in quite a lot of scenes in the movie, it'll just jump back and forth between whether the long hair is real or a wig.
Oh, that's
Uh,
great.
so, which is perhaps more distracting than simply
Oh, of
a
course.
haircut.
That's great, though.
Yeah. So you weren't expecting to be making this movie. If you could travel back in time and tell yourself that you are going to be making this movie, you're not going to be able to make the one you were originally planning on, what would you do differently?
Oh, that's a good question. We would take more time with the monster that shows up in it. That's for sure. That was something that, I mean, we weren't making a monster movie originally. We were, like I said, we were making a family crime drama, and so I called my sister up uh, as we were writing the script, and I said, "Hey, I know you just had a child. However, I need you to build me a bird monster very quickly." And so I would certainly spend more time on that, I think. Um, and then I would have made the script tighter. and a little bit leaner. Everybody has brought up the hour 45. It feels a little bit long, and so I would have. There's a couple things that I would have buttoned up. I'm very happy with the performances. I'm very happy with the story, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. Um, but yeah, I would button some things up a little bit more, and yeah, it would be great to. I mean, I'd be able to sleep on set. That would have been great too. That would have been awesome. I think I would have done all the little things that I claim every movie that I'm going to do to alleviate stress, which is delegate more responsibility and plan everything out ahead. They all go to hell, but all those little things plus the monster, I think, are probably what I would change.
Yeah, talking about wanting to like not having the time to tighten up the script reminds me of, I think it was a Thomas Jefferson quote where he said, like, I apologize for writing this lengthy letter. I didn't have time to write a short one.
Right. This is fantastic. I'm
Yeah.
going to get that tattooed on me.
So when you say you would have worked more on the monster, do you mean like spent more time constructing the physical appearance, or what do you mean?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've heard and we understand is that, especially with the horror community, they want more of the monster, and we completely agree. We do too. And so we would have had more time for that. My sister did a fantastic job with what she was given. I cannot believe she came up with what she did. We focused on what we had. I did hear some reviewers talking about the movie, and they're like, "Just show us more of this thing." And I'm like, "Trust me, you don't want to see it." There's not there wasn't a ton to it. So it especially coming. I just came off set about a week ago from our biggest feature that we've done yet, and it's a monster movie, and we spent a lot of time and a lot of money on that monster, and we got it right, and we're showing the monster as you should, as much as we possibly can throughout the story. And so we want the monster to look cool, and we want to be able to show horror fans the monster. So it would be that. It would be designing the monster, making sure that we do get to see a little bit more. We would probably have it show up a little bit earlier in the movie as well, just so that we want to make sure that horror fans are getting what they want to, besides just our talky movie about friendship.
Yeah. um I think that there's value in doing it both ways.
Sure.
I think showing the monster clearly and or a lot definitely can push a movie more in a schlocky direction,
Sure.
whereas being reserved with it can be more classy,
Mm,
in as much as those things, those distinctions make sense.
sure.
So I think it's a totally valid, especially if you know the restrictions that you're operating under. I think making decisions based on the actual circumstances you're in rather than what you wish you were in is a good decision in general.
No, I agree, and I got to give credit to Chris was the one who edited it, but our colorist Topher was the one who basically edited that last section where things kind of go crazy, and we see some things and don't see some things, and for what it was, he did a hell of a job. And in the scene, it actually works and it actually sells, and people, watching it in the theater with people, it was pretty clear that it was working for a lot of them, and that's very exciting. It is amazing how much editing can save something.
Yeah, I loved the last shot with the screaming and then the title, and yeah, that was great.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you.
um Also fun seeing another Topher in the wild. That's my dad's name, and I don't know many
Oh,
people. I don't know many Christophers who go by Topher. So
I will tell him you said that. I believe the reason that he goes by Topher is because if not, his name would be Chris Hansen. And
oh, that's the name of a famous person. So
that's right. I think that's why he made that decision. But he'll be very happy to hear it. So I will tell him.
interesting. Good. So you mentioned this next movie that you're making. Tell me a bit about that.
Sure. We just finished principal photography for our newest movie. It's called Round the Decay. It is a monster movie. It's about a young woman who returns to this town where her engagement was kind of suddenly and tragically broken off. And she's kind of going back to potentially get some closure. And when she gets there, she kind of finds out about this deadly secret that the townspeople have been keeping from the town for quite some time, and meets kind of this eclectic group of characters. So yeah, like I said, we just finished principal photography. We shot for 18 days. We know we're coming back for a couple pickups, something that we had already planned. But yeah, no, it was the biggest and most expensive project we've ever done, but it's, the most ambitious. We were very excited about it. We have some names from horror, and we have some names from other things jumping in. Damien Maffei was in it. He's from Strangers Prey at Night and from Haunt. And we ended up having one of the coolest things. We had Roger Clark, for anybody who's a Red Dead Redemption fan. We had him on board, and we had Rachel Pizzolatto, who was a Mythbuster, and then we had a bunch of the people we work with in the past, like Victoria Meir, who's our lead. She was the lead in Everwinter as well. I think the world of her clearly, and Jamie Default, who was in that movie as well. And so yeah, we just finished up that principal photography, and we're really excited about what we got. We shot most of it in Waterville Valley, New Hampshire, and then about a third of it we shot at Ruggles Mine, which is also in New Hampshire. So we shot it in an official mine, which was very cool. Logistically, it was bullshit, but but it was ultimately, it was a lot of fun, and we're really excited that that movie is going to be coming. We'll be premiering it in October of this year, and then hopefully getting it out there and streaming, by spring. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and it looks like there's a teaser available for it already, so I'll have to watch that after this.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, it's a teaser we threw together when we were premiering Everwinter Night, and so it was something we threw together really quickly. But people have been responding to it, and it does feature the voice of Victoria Meir, who does play that lead in the movie. And yeah, it was, like all movies, it was hell, and but I mean that in the best of ways. I'm now going through that week of depression that comes afterwards,
Oh,
where yeah, it's insane. While you're on set, you go, I can't believe I'm doing this, and you're begging for sleep and death, and then you end up getting out of it, and you go, man, I wish I was back on set. I can't imagine being anywhere else. So I'm going through that right now. I'm going through the withdrawal, and at the same time, starting to write the next thing, because I'm sick in the head.
yeah. So I'm assuming, based on the use of named actors, that this next one is going to be a union shoot.
It is, yeah. So we did get back together with SAG. We want to support actors, and we want to support the union and all that stuff. We tried our best with Everwinter, and it just didn't work out. But yes, it is a union production, at least from the cast side.
Ah, okay, interesting. I don't know the ins and outs very precisely of the union rules. I was under the impression that the two unions had like an agreement with each other. No? Oh, okay.
No, you're talking about crew and cast.
Yeah.
Very different. Yeah. No, they're hugely different. And so a lot of the people that we do use for crew are union, but they are allowed to work on non-union projects. So it's a very different thing. Where in SAG, I believe it's not only frowned upon, but against the rules to work, if you are a SAG actor, to work on non-union, especially with the updates in their contracts.
That's correct. Yeah, I know that part.
Yeah.
I know.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I know that there have been prominent horror actors in the past who have worked on non-union shoots under fake names.
Yep.
And just sort of hope they didn't get found out, which sometimes works and sometimes causes problems. So
yeah, no, absolutely. There used to be a rule, and I think there still is with short films, where SAG actors can sign a waiver, but it's mostly for student projects and things of that nature. We're not in that budget range anymore. We're still in the ultra low budget range, but we're making movies for money now. This is our full-time jobs for most of us, and so we did have to make sure everything's union, which is positive in some ways too, because a lot of the actors who are non-union, they are getting union credit for this. So if they want to take it and want to use it as a SAG credit, they are more than welcome to. We're planning, Dreamscape Productions, the company that I work for, we're planning on doing both union and non-union shoots going forward. but yeah, this was working with SAG is the way to go. Although it can obviously be there's a lot of things that there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through, but it's for the safety of the actors and things like that.
Yeah. So, um, hmm. Yeah. I'm curious. Like, so you've worked on, it sounds like, a fair number of both. What sort of differences have you noticed on a union set versus a non-union set?
I'm the sets that I've worked on are almost exclusively my own, where I've directed or produced. So most I can only speak from my experience. Honestly, nothing. It is in the pre-production. There's a pre-production. There's a difference. There's a lot more paperwork. Luckily, I now have somebody who does a lot of the paperwork for me, which makes it a lot easier. I'm very not good with paperwork. Um, we try to treat every single set like it's summer camp, and so every time that people come back, it's like, hey, how's school been? Let's get back, and we all try to hang out in the same place, and we try to create this environment where everybody's friendly. As you've probably been able to tell, I'm fairly self-deprecating. We know we're not making The Godfather. We all talk every time something goes wrong. We go, it's okay. The movie sucks. Don't worry about it. It's okay. The movie sucks. And so we keep it light. And whether they're union actors or non-union actors, whether they have names or followings or nothing, or they're getting into it for the first time, we try to treat everything as equal. And you're showing up to hang out. We're playing make believe. Let's not take this all too seriously. And so every time we do it, it's felt like basically the same thing. And if you don't necessarily vibe with that, then we're probably not going to work together anymore, because we really want to kind of cultivate that environment.
Yeah. That's an interesting way of describing it, like summer camp.
Mm.
I have. So, did you? And earlier, you used the specific phrasing of sleeping on set, and I was wondering whether that was just shorthand or if you literally meant sleeping on the location.
Uh, oh, I wish it was shorthand. No, so for Everwinter Night, that's literally what we do, and that's what we've been doing for as long as we can remember. Um, we oftentimes, I'm very not good at a lot of things in movies, but I am very good at talking to people about locations, and I'm able to find locations and get the people who own them to be excited about the movies too, because they're creatives as well. Whenever I meet them, that's the person I work with at Dreamscape Productions. Well, how I know him is because I tried to get his location, and he sent me back his headshot, and he said, "You put me in the movie, you got the location." And so this is what we did for this movie too. Is I reached out, I found the ski lodge, and I said, "Hey, I have an odd request. I'd love to shoot in your place. We can't give you nearly the amount of money you want. We're going to have way more people than it says are can fit in your place. And we're going to sleep where we shoot. And we're going to shoot in your house. And we're also going to use all the rooms and all the beds and all your floors." And he said, "Hey, you have me at odd request." And so we were in. And that's how we do it. It really gets you that summer camp mentality. Our crew sleeps in the 8 bunk beds that are upstairs. I was sleeping under the closet. There's a lot of that. Luckily, with Round the Decay, things stepped up a little bit. We're lucky enough that we own a hotel, and so that hotel was a place that we did shoot in, but we all had our own separate rooms. And then when we moved over to that mine I mentioned, we ended up renting out some cottages. So we were still doing some of the summer camp type stuff. People were bunking up and whatnot, but less shooting in the location. We try to limit that now, just because it can also slow down shooting, and we don't have that luxury where it's like, hey, we need to clear out all the beds in this room so that we can shoot a scene. You get kind of tired of it once you get into your 30s. So it has been like that though, where probably for 4 of our features we will just sleep in the place that we are filming, because it saves you a little bit of money.
Yeah, although renting out a bunch of cabins and stuff doesn't sound especially cheap. So you
It was not.
mentioned, yeah, earlier you called this an ultra low budget film.
Sure.
And I'm really curious if you could put some specific numbers on that, because
Yeah.
people frequently mean different things
Hmm.
when they use adjectives like that.
Yeah. Sure. I love to talk about budget. I know a lot of people are a little bit scared about it, and I can understand why. I can't go into like the details of Round the Decay because we're still kind of working
Sure.
through it. I can just tell you
Well,
that
and
it's
because I haven't
significant.
seen it.
Yeah, yeah. It's significantly more than what we spent on Everwinter. Everwinter Night we spent $60,000 on.
Okay,
Um,
not
so
bad.
the anything that is considered ultra low budget is anything that's under $300,000, at least according to SAG, which is how you figure out rates. So there's
Yeah.
yeah, under 300,000 gets you a certain rates, then 300 to 700, 700 to 2 million, and anything over 2 million. So those are kind of the tiers that you work in. So we work in that ultra low budget range. 60,000 is obviously there. Um, though this was not a SAG project, we still kind of think in those terms. And so, yeah, our budget was about $60,000. It came from three different sources. One of them is Dreamscape Productions, who stepped forward at the end. And that's how Dreamscape kind of came to be. And then the other two big chunks of money came from me and then my other executive producer, Jay Voichness. We put in, $40,000 combined, and we just said we do the same thing on all of our movies. When we do have some money, we say we're putting this money in, and if we never see it back, that's fine. We did this to create something, and if we get the money back, all we're going to do is put it into the next movie. So that's kind of how we came at this. Um, and yeah, we try to keep the budgets low. It's amazingly difficult to do, especially now that I'm budgeting so many different movies. It's so hard to keep $60,000 is. It sounds like a lot of money to a lot of people, and it is a lot of money. But my God, it's difficult to keep things under that. And Round the Decay we're at least we're about four times higher than that. So yeah, our goal is to hopefully keep building up and making bigger budget movies, but we do kind of like hanging around that ultra low budget place because it allows you a lot of creative freedom.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Because you're right that there are official SAG guidelines about like this is what this means in terms of budget.
Mm,
Um, and the vast majority of people that I interview are not doing SAG movies.
mm,
I mean, they're very, very independent.
sure.
And so most of them describe their movies as micro budget, and most of the people that I interview are 100,000 or lower. That's what they mean by
Sure.
that.
Yep.
So you're right in there with them, but with
Mm,
some just slightly different ways of referring to things.
mm.
Uh, so um, tell me a bit about the decision to try to go for uh SAG things when you can.
Sure. I mean, it just opens a lot of doors,
Hmm.
for people that you can bring into a project. I, I hate saying it, but names, they do have value. And what's great is the names that we've worked with. And I hate, yeah, again, names, air quotes as much as possible, because the people that we work with and have been working with that are non-union for these past 15 years or whatever, they're every bit as talented as the other ones. They're not names yet, or not as well established or well known. And we think that they're heading that way, but they're incredible. But yeah, it's always great to be able to bring in an actor who has some clout and can help the movie get its feet underneath it. And with Everwinter, we have a couple of them, and with Round the Decay, we have a couple more. We'd love to work with more actors too. That's every project that we do. We try to bring in a couple new crew members and a couple new actors to see if they're going to kind of gel with what we do. Which of course does mean that sometimes some of the other actors and whatnot are left out for that project. But we always plan on working with them again. We want to keep making movies. We're not Tarantinoing ourselves and limiting ourselves to 10. I'd like to make 10 in the next 5 years. That would be amazing. So it just opens potentially more doors, which means that you could also potentially bring in more revenue, or just gets an easier way to get eyes onto your movie, which you know we want to have happen. The most important thing for all of our movies is that they get seen. We just want people to watch them. uh, they do need to start becoming financially viable as well, because we run a business now, and this is basically my full-time job now. And so the people who put the money in do need to get the money back. It would be great to make more than that, but a lot of them are just comfortable getting that money back. And so having having SAG actors can really help. And then obviously there's the quality as well. a lot of them are very, very talented. So that helps too. Like I said, though, I'm willing to do non-union. I'm willing to do union. The next project that we're kind of talking about doing, which we haven't set in stone, we're talking about doing non-union just to keep it cheaper and use some of the people that we do like working with. And we kind of want to go back and do something a little bit smaller because Round the Decay was a lot of special effects and a lot of crew and a lot of cast. We had about 60 people total, in and out, whether it be cast or crew total. And so it'd be nice to go back to a little bit smaller, which kind of lends itself a little bit more to non-union.
So you said that this is your full-time job, and you also said that you're like hoping that the movies break even. Does that mean that you're making a living off of like a director's fee for the film, and then also hoping that the investment portion of being an executive producer pays back, or how do you mean all that?
Well, so I work for Dreamscape Productions, and Dreamscape Productions, I'm paid what I'm paid. I'm paid a salary, and it. I also have other tasks that are tied to different. We run a lot of different businesses here. Like I mentioned, we had a hotel. We just sold it, but we had one that was, and I was kind of tied to that as well as I'm tied to a couple other businesses that are associated with that. So my salary kind of comes from there. But the good news is we're pushing harder and harder to be making movies more full time, which means that most of my day to day is focused on, right now it's getting Everwinter, getting more eyes on Everwinter, is pushing that while, my editor is working on post production for Round the Decay. And once he's done with that, we'll go back and we'll shoot the other stuff, and then I'll be writing another thing. So I'm incredible. I can't express how lucky I am. I can bitch and moan about, having to shoot a movie on the fly and the stresses of making a movie. But as I was driving in the other day to the first day of shooting, I said, "What the fuck am I complaining about, man? I get to do exactly what I want to do, and I'm getting paid to do this." And this was an idea that I drew up in my head a year ago. I was in England on vacation, and I was note carding this movie out. How dare I ever complain? So I'm very lucky that is the case. Obviously, I'm also very aware that if these movies don't start to return on investment, then my job might have to change a little bit. So I do take it very seriously, and I understand that making this company some money back is ultimately important. Trying to find the best ways to do that, but I'm certainly driven to, because it's the only thing. It's the thing when I wake up, it's the first thing I think about. And when I go to sleep, it's the last thing I think about, so I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very lucky that I get to do it.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you're having such a good time doing that. That's an important and valuable thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay. So if I can ask a bit of a sillier and little denigrating of a question, what's the deal
Sure.
with that sword prop?
Okay, so I will tell you originally, the original Everwinter Night movie, which was called Everwinter Night, which I understand is very confusing. However, in that movie, there was a movie within that movie, which was called Everwinter Night, which was a samurai movie, which we were going to have some scenes from with that sword. And it was supposed to be a cheesy samurai movie that one of the characters was obsessed with. And that movie was, of course, called Everwinter Night as well, just to add confusion. But that was the expectation. We were going to shoot this like very low res version of that. And so what ended up happening is obviously had to go make a different movie, and we had that sword. And so we said, you know what, we got to find some way to use it. And Chris, who wrote the movie with me, was just obsessed with it. And so he was playing with it all the time in between takes. It is very dull. It is barely usable. But we wanted to find some way to work it in. And he kept it at the end of the shoot because he loved it so much.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And we wanted to have, we like the idea of, there's some guns in the movie, but, we wanted to have something a little bit more physical. It was a little bit more fun to play with. And then, Chris wrote that really fun speech about the age of the sword, and it, just kind of worked itself out. We get lucky when things like that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the speech about the age of the sword that made me take notice, because I was going like, that is clearly a modern sword.
I'm you're probably one of the few who does recognize it,
Okay,
which is
okay.
good. But no, you are dead on. I mean, that thing, it's probably about, I think it's 15 years old, because I think my buddy did buy it about 15 years ago, or I believe he got it as a throw-in when he bought an axe. So yeah, it is not.
Yeah.
We made sure to show the handle like once, and then after that, we're kind of trying to hide it a little bit, because yeah, it does kind of give the age away a little bit.
It's the holes in the blade that made me
Oh, gotcha.
take notice.
I gotcha.
Um, so this is one of those movies that has characters that I like and characters that I really hate. I love characters that I love to hate, and
Sure.
I love finding a good character like that in a film,
Mm,
especially a horror film where they get their comeuppance in a really
yep.
dramatic and gory way.
Sure.
So, what sort of things, like, there's tons of advice out there, like Save the Cat and everything, about how to write appealing characters. Though, if you have good insights on that, I am curious about that too. But I'm
Mm.
really curious about how to write characters that people love to hate.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's actually harder to write appealing characters.
Oh, okay.
Probably. Uh, you
We'll talk
know,
about both then.
yeah. So making appealing, I don't have a lot of interest in characters that I find necessarily likable. I kind of hate that note that you hear where it's like, oh, the character's not likable enough. I just
You,
think every
you didn't
time.
like the main character? I like the
Oh,
main
of
character.
course, but I like all the characters in the movie to a degree, or at least I think that I have to understand them,
Yeah.
and even if they're a little bit over the top, of course I love, yeah, V and Maddie, the two characters, but so much of their relationship is based off of me and my sister, like that's how we act towards each other. And the movie really
Oh,
stems
okay.
from, yeah, it really stems from the fear of me losing my sister. And as she grows older and, she has a child and she's gone off and get married and we move further away from each other, it's kind of based off that fear. Um, as for writing characters, I just think about everything in movies and story as want and need, and characters want things, and I typically try to make it that their needs are the opposite, and hopefully in the end they'll get what they need, but maybe have to sacrifice what they want. And I think that just becomes dramatically interesting. um, as for these other characters, these characters you love to hate, I think that's probably a positive thing, because what it means is that we're making them complex in annoying ways. And I think everybody's annoying. So I think I think everybody can be, a bit of a shithead, and can be loud and can be outrageous. And I bump into a lot of people that, I roll my eyes over. And then I also understand that so many people must be doing the same about me. So yeah, I enjoy doing it, but I think it's just by making them as human as you possibly can. And then I think once you do that, it becomes a lot easier. I don't want to think of anybody as one note, or anybody as um, only there to serve. Oh, they have to be here to explain something. I don't love doing that. I try to think of everybody as somebody who has a rich life. There's the character of the summoner, and we talk about her and like, what does she do in her off time? And we kind of came up that she works a desk job, and we were talking about that, and like, and how frustrated she is at her desk job because she's the fucking summoner. You know what I mean? She's doing this other thing once a year, but meanwhile she's probably making copies for somebody that she hates. So we think about stuff like that. It's always trying to make them as human as possible, and I think it's much easier to make the people less appealing because most people are less appealing.
Wow, that is so different from like anything I was guessing you might say.
I love all the characters, though. I do. I love them, and I especially some of the ones that you hate. And I think that makes it good when you want people to be cheering for their death, but hopefully you also want them to be feeling bad about some of them too. And that was kind of part of this is kind of a tangent, but that was kind of part of the thing that Chris said to me when he was writing it. And we came out of a good showing for the movie, and he said, it's so great that everybody got to laugh with the characters, because when you laugh with them, it makes their death a lot more tragic, you know. So that's kind
Uh,
of, yeah. It felt really nice when he said that. It makes a lot of
okay.
sense. Yeah, and
Yeah,
even
that
if
is
you're laughing at them, you know, it feels a little bit better.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Both of those, the idea like laugh with the characters, you'll care more about their death. That makes sense to me. The idea
Mm.
that it's easier to write characters that you love to hate because everyone is annoying.
I,
That's what I'm gonna
I
have to noodle over for a while.
I think I don't like watching movies with characters who are just heroic or anything like that. I like watching movies about cowards who have to
Hmm.
become heroic. That's far more interesting, you know. So uh, there has to be something incredibly hateable about somebody, I think, in order to learn to love them at the end, and feel something about them, you know, and because that's really what they are. I don't, you know, movies are entertainment, sure, that's for sure. That's what, you know, we're creating them for to a degree. But they're really just like empathy machines, you know. That's the great Roger Ebert quote. It's just to make you feel things for other people that aren't you. And I read somebody say, "Hey, V, you know, the lead in the movie, is kind of a nag, but by the end, I kind of felt for her." And it's like, that's it. That's, you just described movies exactly how they need to be described. It's feeling a certain way about somebody and then watching them change and then feeling differently about them. So I think it's always best to have your characters be awful and annoying and cowardly and, you know, scared and doing the wrong thing, only so that when they do the right thing, that you can feel something.
Okay, so then how do you write likable characters? Because something you said a moment ago, you don't like. I forget the exact phrasing you used, but it struck me as like the opposite of the
Mm-hmm.
sort of save the cat.
Mm-hmm.
How to make the audience like the character idea of like show them doing something unambiguously good that everybody likes purely out of the
Yeah.
goodness of their heart. Uh,
Mm, I hate
um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So if you hate that and you like making the audience dwell with the character's flaws,
Mm,
what do you do to make the audience like the character? And for like for our main character, what would you consider the flaws that the things that would annoy you about her that we the audience are supposed to stick with
mm.
or
Um,
stick through?
Sure. Oh, I mean, so if we go to V in the movie, that's a pretty good one. Obviously, she's very clingy. She won't let her friend have a good time, which
Hmm,
means that ultimately that she's very selfish, and she's thinking about this completely in terms of her happiness. And I think that, you know,
okay.
Maddie late in that movie kind of does say like, you can only be happy when you're with me. She's not even allowing Maddie to be happy by herself or with her other friends. It's always been about V, and that's the moment of change for V. I think the way that you make somebody likable is, again, it's going to sound like a cop out, but you make them very human. Um,
Hmm.
V is, yeah, she is that, but she's also self-deprecating and she's funny and she's dry. And I think ultimately, even though her big flaw is that she won't let her friend go off and do these things because she's selfish, she also cares about her friend. And so I think audiences see that and they go, "Oh, I give a shit about my friend and I can be naggy and I can be this, but it's ultimately because I care about her. I care about her so much." And so hopefully at the end, when V has had this, I know we're getting into major spoiler territory here, but when V has had this moment, you know, where Maddie kind of yells at her and she kind of decides to be, finally she can be an individual. We feel both sides of that. Oh my God, she cared for her friend, but holy shit, she's become something on her own when she never believed that she could be that on her own. She always thought that to be the best version of herself, she needed to have Maddie with her, you know?
Yeah, interesting. I had barely been thinking about Fee's flaws while
Mm,
watching it because like she's the sort of point of view character
mm,
and like the first significant emotional beat of the movie is
mm.
her friend kind of betraying her.
Yeah,
And so I was like, all right, hey, here's the point of view character. Sure, I'll identify with this character. Oh, this character suffered this like this betrayal that's not like a huge tragedy, but if I was in that situation, I would be really annoyed and it would
sure.
probably take me more than a long weekend to get over it.
Yeah,
Like
of
I would
course.
probably be grumpy for the rest of that trip.
Yeah.
Um and so I sort of watched the whole rest of that movie from that perspective
Mm.
of being like, yeah, the other characters are having fun, but they're such assholes. I'm so mad at them. Uh, and so like, yeah. I mean, now that you pointed out, yeah, I can see the sense in which it was still selfish of her, but yeah, interesting.
I mean, I hopefully you feel it indirectly, you know, and so like, yeah, of course, V is supposed to be your point of view character, and she's seeing what's going on in the house and things like that, and so you're agreeing with what she's doing. But if you look at it, you know, from the other side, and you look at it from Maddie's side, Maddie's not doing the cool thing, but at the same time, hopefully you can understand that she probably feels suffocated from this friend. Maybe she didn't actually want to do this thing. Maybe she kind of wants to grow up and have two lives, but also keep V as her friend as well. And she's trying to navigate that line and knows that if she says something to her, it's going to end up in a fight. So why not go about it the way that she's going about it? And you know, V's getting in her way when she's potentially interested in a guy. And so I think that, you know, I think Fincher says it best, right? It's like a scene is only good when both characters are right. And so that's kind of what I think about in a lot of these scenes. Both characters have to believe that they're right. And
Okay.
so, yeah, I think V is an incredibly annoying character in the good ways, but I'm like also, you know, like madly in love with her because I think she's sweet and she's funny and she's cool, and also she ends up proving that she's a badass in the end when she's kind of a little bit of a wet blanket, you know. She's even called a wet blanket in it. So and I think that those are typically the characters that, you know, in movies and things like that that I side with the most, are the people that are flawed, you know, and oftentimes feel like outsiders, and yet at the end they learn something new about themselves. And so yeah, that's at least the goal. And you know, I think that's Chris feels the same way too, who wrote a lot of these characters too. A lot of them are there to exist to fuck things up for V and fuck things up for Maddie as well, obviously. But they also have their wants and their needs as well. You know, even, you know, the two annoying friends, you know, they have things that they desire and they are either punished for it or even one of them gets what they want. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I'm glad you clarified on the like I'm not familiar with that Fincher quote, so I'm glad you clarified
Mm.
on that it's not two characters both have to be right, it's they both have to be
They both have
convinced
to
that
believe
they're
that they're
right.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
That makes sense. Which again, making it human, everybody's convinced they're right all the time.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, exactly. And there's nothing more human than being delusional. So I think that, and I think that all these characters, I mean, hopefully come off as quite delusional.
okay. So all right, that's something we've talked about. We've talked around sort of several times now. Can you dive into that a little deeper? What do you do specifically to make characters more human? You mentioned not making them there just to like deliver exposition or anything
Mm,
like that. They always have
mm,
desires, needs, and
mm,
wants.
mhm.
What else?
I mean, those are the two big ones for sure. You know, needs versus wants. Their needs they can't recognize. That's typically what I try to put in there. So they don't understand that the need is the need. They want something desperately, and if the need is completely the opposite of the want, then you got a really rich story. You can really dive into that. Um, One of my favorite filmmakers is Jeff Nichols. I don't know if you know, but he made Take Shelter and Shotgun Stories,
I have
and
not seen those.
you should definitely, especially Take Shelter. It's like horror adjacent. It's very psychological.
Okay.
He made a Midnight Special and Mud. These are all Mud is a great film, but he has this great line. Now we didn't do this as much in Everwinter because we are kind of flying by the seat of our pants, but he says in order to write characters, all he does is just give them a job, and then after that they just kind of start talking because so much of
Oh,
your yeah, you give them a job and then you start going like, oh well, what time do they wake up? Who do they hang out with? What time?
okay,
Who would they
okay.
hang out with? Are they in a bowling league? Are they in a that starts to tell you a lot about who they are. And I try to do that. I try to give them last names oftentimes. I try to give them rough outlines. I try to leave some room for actors too to kind of throw in their 2 cents, and especially once I've written a character, it's no longer mine. You know, it's the actors. And once the movie's out, I know if the movie's not mine, Everwinter doesn't belong to me anymore. It's yours. You know, it's anybody else's. I have just as much say about what it's about as you do. Um, but I think that adding those things to characters makes them human because everybody has a job and everybody has a family. So think about their family. You don't need to put it in there, but think about it. You know, oh, does V have siblings? Does V have parents? Does Maddie have siblings? Does Maddie have parents? You know, where did they grow up? How close do they live to each other? You think about these little things, and I think it starts to create humans. And of course, hopefully, as filmmakers, we talk to people and meet people, and so many little quirks that they have end up making their way into a lot of these characters, steal them. You know, like humans exist only for the sake of story. They exist so that we can just pull things from them and put them into these things. And the same thing with art, especially with art. You know, once art has been created, it is for the consumer, and therefore I have never stolen from a movie. I am only taking inspiration. And so when you feel humans, I think that you can, when you feel real human qualities and you start to pick and choose them and you put them into, you know, as long as it feels right. And I think that when a movie really feels like it's working is when the characters, it sounds so fucking pretentious, but they'll start talking. You know, the script didn't do it as much because we were writing on the fly, but oftentimes they'll just like take over, you know, and it's like I just happen to be the person taking the meeting minutes and I'm just typing as fast as I can, trying to make sure that I don't fuck up the translation. And so, yeah, I think all of those things kind of end up making it. So hopefully you can make somebody, you know, seem relatively human.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to take up too much time of this episode with it, but
Mm.
have you ever played role-playing games at all?
Only when it's like I don't play it like tabletop role playing
Okay.
games or anything like that.
All
But
right.
like, yeah, I spent
That,
150 hours on Baldur's Gate 3. So yeah, no, I play.
okay. Well, tabletop was more what I was talking about.
Sure, sure.
I'm very into them, and I've designed a game called Fear of the Unknown, which was inspired by horror films. And I promise I'm not just using like every episode of
That
this
sounds cool.
podcast to pitch it.
Yeah.
But specifically the asking these questions and writing down the answers to them is how you generate your characters in that game.
Mm.
And so I would love to like send you the quick start and get your thoughts on that and see what
Oh, I
sort
love
of,
it.
if there are like questions that you always ask about your characters that aren't on my list that I could think about, because that just lines up so similarly that I have
Oh,
to.
please do.
Yeah.
No, it sounds incredible, and please do send it to me because I love this type of stuff. Although I don't have the patience for tabletop games. That's really what it is. I want to be playing like games fast. I want everything to go really fast. I work way too fast when it comes to these things, but I'd love to see that because I love that type of stuff.
All right. Well, as long as I'm
Yeah.
already talking about it, this is intended as a zero prep made for one shots game, so you can, once you've read it and know how to play, you can sit down and start playing immediately, and finish up in 3 or 4 hours and tell a
Oh, you're
complete story
selling
from
me.
beginning to end. So yeah.
Okay. All right. You're selling me. All right. I'm all the way in now. So yeah, please send it to me and then I'll
Awesome.
play. Yeah.
uh so moving back to filmmaking,
Sure.
um so you are continuing to try to aim for these ultra low budget films, but you're also trying to become sort of more, I don't know if mainstream is the word I'm looking for, but like whatever it is that the direction, like working with more SAG actors, uh, working with more established names and things like that. Uh, do you have like a 5-year plan, a 20-year plan, anything like that for best case, most likely case scenarios or anything?
Nothing to that level, I would say. Obviously we want to, I literally in the dinner meeting I just had, we were talking about that and about how we never want to take a step back. I don't think any of it is a step back. It's all, if I make something that's cheaper with non-union actors, I also come with the entire skill set that I've just learned, plus all the other years of experience. So it's not a step back. It's not a sidestep. It's progress. It's all progress. That's the old line from the great TV show Lost. It's all progress until the end. So I do I do think that doing something like that is totally fine. I would like, listen, I want to make a Star Wars movie. I want to make, there's tons of movies. I have the pitch for Guardians 4. I've been working on it for a while. So I have lots of those things that I want to do, and I want to tell huge stories. I came at this, my first story I ever wrote was because I was watching my uncle play Final Fantasy 3, and he wouldn't let me play. And so I was just watching, and I could read the dialogue faster than he could read it. So I got the whole story out of it, and I was obsessed with it. And so I want to tell fantasy stories, I want to tell sci-fi stories, and I want to tell horror stories, and I want to tell all the stories. So in 10 years, if I'm still making movies, then I'm doing everything that I could want. I obviously want to expand on things, and there's things that I've been working on for years. I just was talking today with a location about a drama that I've been wanting to shoot for the past 7 or 8 years that I've been writing very slowly and just, updating ever so slightly. But it's, that's a family drama about a tennis player. And then I've got a story it's called The Crystals and the Corn Girl. That's a feature fantasy that I've been writing for 10 years, and I want to do that too. But I'd also, if you said, hey, I have $10,000 and I want 2 actors in a room, I'll make that too. So I think for 5 years, if I'm still making movies, it'll be incredible. 10 years, even better. 20 years, hell yeah, let's go. I'm probably getting close to death at that point, because it's definitely going to give me a heart attack. But if I can do that for that long, and I was actually speaking with my girlfriend today, and we were talking about retirement. I said, I just want to let you know that I never plan on retiring. And she goes, oh no, I know that about you. So I want to keep making them. That's it. And however I can make them, and I hope it's with Dreamscape Productions, because I really love what we've got here. But if you left me on an island with a camera, I'd find a way to make something with it, or try to. So that's my hope, is to keep doing that. And whether it be $200 million or $200, I'll try to do it.
All right. So, yeah, tell me a bit about your relationship with Dreamscape Productions. What's that? Normally, when I hear people talking about an independent production company in the sort of ways that you are, it's the founder of it that I'm talking to, who's talking about it that way. But that, based on what little you've said about it so far, doesn't sound like that's the case here.
I'm only sort of a founder. I'm certainly not the CEO. So I work with, right now it's 3 people, which is me, Topher Hansen, who is in Everwinter Night and was also our colorist. He plays Clark, or Sugar Bear, and he is one of the other parts. And then Sean Ward, who's also in the movie as well. He plays Charlie, but he's the executive producer for a lot of these projects. And so it's the 3 of us right now as part of that team. And yeah, we kind of formed it. I mean, it's only been 6 or 8 months that it officially formed. But we all kind of came from different places. Sean comes from a business background. Topher comes from a place called Fake Charmer Productions. And then my old company was called But It Did Happen Productions. And we've kind of mixed all of them together. And now it's the 3 of us. We have another person who works kind of part-time for us as well. And then we are hoping, fingers crossed, knock on wood, all that fun stuff, that we're going to start building a studio, and we're going to start bringing in more people and all that type of stuff. So we have big plans. And, we were talking today about shooting a $10 million movie in the Caribbean, and Sean is convinced that we can do it within the next 3 years. So that would be fun too, So yeah, it's a fun team. And what I love about them is they all just, they give a shit about stories. And yeah, that we want to make money, but ideally we want to be able to tell as many stories as we possibly can from as many different angles as we possibly can. So I really am enjoying it so far. I'm very lucky. Every year, I have said this for the past 5 years, it's been the best year of my life each year.
Well, that's wonderful.
And yeah, it's great. And so Dreamscape is forming this and getting Everwinter out, and now getting Round the Decay off the ground. It's a dream come true. So hopefully we can keep going with it, as long as people keep watching it. That's the only way we can do it.
Yeah. Man, if you do end up getting the opportunity to make that mid-budget movie in the Caribbean, you should
Yep.
definitely read Roger Corman's book, How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime, and then instead make 2 low-budget movies in the Caribbean.
I would love that. He is so convinced on what he wants to do. What he wants scuba diving and all this type of stuff. And it's like, Sean, if we could make 10 movies with that money, $10 million movies. So I do feel similarly. But if if he wants to make an adventure movie for $10 million, I will direct it in a heartbeat. So
Yeah.
I'm ready and willing. So
Yeah, that's great. And for anyone listening, I do definitely recommend Roger Corman's book. It's very entertaining. There isn't a ton of practical advice in it, but the one bit of practical advice that did stick with me is like if you're already going to a location, if you're already using a set, and if you're already buying all these costumes to make a movie, you could just use all that same stuff to make another second movie. Uh,
I'm so glad that you brought that up. So because I've been making movies since I was 20, and so it's been 15 or 16 years, and I had like a little hiatus. I used to work with a directing partner, and we kind of ended up breaking off because we just had different ideas as to what we wanted to do. And I spent like 2 or 3 years without making something. I was just writing, and I remember where I was. I picked up Make Your Own Damn Movie, the
by
Lloyd
Lloyd
Kaufman
Kaufman.
book. Yeah,
That's my very favorite book on filmmaking.
it's I was reading it on a beach, and I went, I could fucking do this. This is so it's so inspiring because it's just like make it,
Yeah.
just fucking make it. You have no excuse. Make it for nothing, and it gives you like practical advice about all this. And I was like absorbing it, and so much so that the next movie I made, I was like, I want to make it's this movie we made called Scarlet K, where it was I wanted to do if Trauma did a Richard Linklater movie, and so that's that's what I
Okay.
was, and so that's what I did for Scarlet K because I was obsessed at that time with just getting it done, and I love that. I love the foreword of that book with Trey Parker talking about I live by that chapter in that book because it's so much about how much bullshit is in this industry and how many people just want to make a buck. And when Lloyd just like very simply said, you want people to see the movie, don't you? And like how much that has changed my mind about things. All of a sudden it stopped becoming, for so long I was so obsessed with my own ego and like everybody calling me a genius. And at that point it was like, no, like this is about telling a story and getting people to see the story, and that's it. And so I love like Roger Corman very much comes from my school of thinking and just like make shit. It's the same thing. We have a prop house now because we just have all of the props that we have, and
Oh,
you better
good.
believe we've used the same guns in every movie. Yes, we've used the same outfits in every movie. One character was wearing the jacket in Round the Decay that Jack in Everwinter gets killed in. So we are using all of these constantly.
Fantastic. Yeah, another thing you said a while ago that reminded me of Roger Corman is the sort of summer camp
Mm,
atmosphere that
mhm.
a thing that like I've noticed a lot of different directors, especially once you get to like higher budget directors with larger casts and crew, can have different relationships with their cast and crew. Like,
Yep.
and it sounds like you're going for a very sort of amiable,
Yeah.
having fun making a movie together kind of attitude. Is that right?
That's definitely, yeah. I absolutely want it to be the case. I'm not a director who screams at all. I mean, I get mad, but if I get mad, it's only at myself or at a circumstance. Never get mad at an actor. Never mad at a crew member ever. Just make it so that I want it to be fun to show up, and I want most important thing of all is that cast and crew feel safe. I just want them to feel safe, that they are safe to play. So they get there and they get to try things. And yes, we are running at 1,000 miles per hour, but hopefully they feel like they get to play. And my only job is to make them comfortable to play at all times. And so if at any point I see that they are struggling, the only thing I have to do is remind them that we are just playing, and that if at any point they need anything, they need another take, I'll give you another take. Of course, yeah, we can do that. Um, constantly trying to do that because I've heard so many horror stories of a
Nice.
set, and you don't want to.
Oh,
There's so many people that get away with abusive behavior, and then they make great movies, and so we give it a pass, and I'm sorry, it's fucked up. I don't want to play that.
yeah, yeah. That and while that certainly is like an archetype of director and
Mm,
one to be avoided, I agree. That's not the only alternative to the very like accommodating, amiable one. There's
mm.
also the very like, professional, we are coworkers here to do a job
Oh,
together,
sure.
which is also a totally valid way of doing things, I think, although one that,
Oh,
that appeals
completely.
less to me.
Yeah, it does the same with me. And it's interesting. I have a friend of mine. His name's Simon Cade. I don't know if you know his YouTube channel, but it's DSLR Guide, which was really popular for a time when YouTube was really booming about, I don't know, 8 years ago, when like a lot of these tutorials came out on how to make movies. And I ended up becoming friends with him, and he was talking about how he wanted to work on one of our sets, and he said every one of his sets he leaves handshaking, and every one of our sets we leave hugging. And he's like, I want to be a part of something like that. And so
Hmm.
that became like a mantra for us, which was, hugs not handshakes, hugs not handshakes. And so that after every shoot, everybody is hugging each other. We're dying, we've just been through the fire, but at the same time, I want it to feel like we're close. And it might not be a friendship, but it's it's like surviving the war. Like we're all compatriots here. We're all comrades after coming out of it. And I like that. Yeah, no, I agree though that, like, if you want to be business, I know that, Sam Raimi says that he always wears a suit to set because he wants everybody to think that he's very serious. And I get that. But yeah, I try to keep it as laid back as humanly possible and make sure that we are laughing even if the story's not that funny.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good attitude.
Mm.
Um, okay, so uh the question I always like to end with is, where do you see the future of independent film going?
Good God, that's the scariest question there is. I It's going to be a major couple because I just don't know. I have to believe that people still love stories, or I wouldn't keep doing this. So I think that filmmaking and storytelling is going to continue to exist. I have to believe it, and in the capacity that we're telling it, right? In feature films. Um, I don't like listening to the attention span these days. Just make something interesting, and people will attach to it. I do believe that streaming has changed everything. It's going to continue to change everything. Tubi is king right now. That's where we make our money. It won't be in a year and a half. I can almost guarantee it. It'll be a very different landscape. And Tubi is trying to become something different right now because they probably see that it's changing too. I think it's going to change. I think that we just have to be willing to adapt, and hopefully we can find our own avenues and create our own avenues. I think it is the best time to be a filmmaker, though. I do. It is the easiest time to make a movie. It's the cheapest time to make a movie, and it's the easiest and best way to get distributed. We no longer have to wait for anybody. We don't have to. I was sold a lie when I grew up, which was, if you get your movie into a festival, they're going to see it, and that's it. You're now a filmmaker. They're going to give you money, and you're just going to make whatever the fuck you want. And
Ooh,
it's
people
all
were telling you
bullshit.
that?
Yeah, it was what I was sold as a kid, and it
Oh
was
my
like,
God, that's
and
terrible.
so everybody goes like, "Oh, we going to Sundance yet?" And it's like, Sundance is now, it's not a independent film festival. It's a place where bigger directors show their movies off. It's a different thing, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I think it's going to keep changing, but I do think that stories will continue to survive. I'm terrified for the sake of movie theaters. I want that to
Mm.
continue to survive, and maybe it's just the horror in me, but I am afraid that they will go away. I just moved. I just bought a house, and I'm very happy about it. And it's 10 minutes away is a movie theater, which I went finally, because I was about 45 minutes away from a movie theater until then, and it wasn't a good theater either. And uh, only to find out that in 2 weeks the movie theater's closing. So I'm getting a lot of
Ooh.
that. Yeah, it's soul crushing to watch it happen. However, I still go to independent theaters, and so I live on the East Coast, and Boston is a great hub for independent theaters, and there's this place called the Coolidge Theater. And every time I go there, I go, cinema's back, baby! Like every time I go, the entire crowd is packed. I saw Love Lies Bleeding there, and there wasn't a free seat, and it's amazing. Maybe that's what becomes more of a niche thing, and it's only in select areas, and it's kind of a special event situation, especially because tentpole movies are dying. It seems like, which is good. They need to die. Uh, they do. I'm terrified about the mid-budget movie, but I am also curious if it does start to change because of the death of the tentpole movie. I'm sorry that I'm rambling here, but
No, it's fine.
but maybe those $250 million movies become 25 $10 million movies, and studios start understanding that those can be financially viable, and also gives you an opportunity to tell original stories. So it's interesting. I listened to Tarantino talk about cinema, and he talks about how shitty now is, but he also talked about how shitty the '80s were, and so we kind of, I think it comes and goes in waves, and I have to believe that, and I believe that there will be a boom, and especially from more people, because we're all able to tell our stories, and so I think there's going to be a lot of original talent, or a lot of original stories coming out, and I hope that they're going to be more visible. But I'm really curious to see what happens with streaming and what happens with the theaters, because it means that we are going to be consuming media in a very different way. That's very convoluted, but that's kind of, I do think about it a lot, but I think about it in a very convoluted fashion. So,
Bunch of interesting things to think about there. Like, yeah,
mm,
the potential. Like, I don't even have anything to say about the future of streaming because I have no idea what's going to happen
sure,
there.
yeah,
The fall of the physical cinemas is definitely seems to be continuing to happen. One thing, I live in a smallish city in Colorado,
sure.
and we have one movie theater, uh, and then we also have a drive-in movie theater,
Oh, okay.
and that is extremely great. I love that a lot. It just opened up this past weekend. I didn't go, but I'm probably going to go this coming weekend.
Sure.
Um and that provides such a different experience from the cinema,
Mm.
or the hardtop cinema. I'm so much more willing to just like go out and pay for it all the time. So I definitely recommend going to those if you ever have the opportunity.
And that might be where it does start to go. There will be ways, I think, to view movies, but it might be viewed like that. It's a special occasion where you go to either a drive-in, or you go to a place where you can sit down and have a beer, or you go to a place where there's a big crowd, and maybe it's not always just new movies. You're playing older movies that you have some connection to, or whatever it may be. I think that there's going to be a place for those at all times, especially in certain pockets of places. Like I said, with Boston, um, we have a drive-in somewhere near here as well.
Yeah,
It's the same type of thing, and the fact that they haven't died yet, especially, you live in Colorado, so you understand the same situation, which is that half of the year you can't do them,
that's
and
true. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and yet they still survive. And so
Yeah.
I'm eternally optimistic about storytelling, because I think it has been around as long as we possibly, ever since the people could connect, they were telling stories. And so things will change, and it will become different, and sometimes some things will be easier. I don't understand AI, so I don't know what the hell is going on. Honestly, I'm not that worried about it. um I can't, I'm still having a hard time imagining a world where an AI can write a very human script that people care about. I could be proven wrong, but I'm not too worried about that. My fear is about the cinema and things like that. But ultimately, if the cinema changes the experience and changes the dollar cost, and maybe the movies that are being made are things that people are more interested in, because people have gotten tired of the tent poles. It does seem like,
Yeah.
maybe there's a chance that it comes back around.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned like hoping that the tent poles go fall and we get a lot more
Yep.
mid-budget films. And so that prompted me to look up what movies are currently playing at the drive-in and see if I can find their budgets.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so the drive-in has two screens and each one shows a double feature.
Okay.
So there's four movies total. And
Yep.
the budgets for the four movies that they're playing are $85 million,
Hmm.
$135 million,
Mm,
$120 million, and $11 million.
What's
And
the $11 million movie?
well, I'm betting that's the one that's going to be remembered the longest because
Yeah,
those movies are in order: Kung Fu Panda 4, The
sure.
Fall Guy,
Yep.
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes,
Yep.
and Alien.
Oh, no shit. Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Aliens playing. Oh, that's so great. Um, Alien was only an $11 million movie.
Yeah, although it was made a long time ago, so
Sure. With inflation, I'm sure it's a different, but it's still Alien fucking rules, man. Alien's a great movie. That's for sure. I was not expecting you to say Alien. Wow. Okay. Um,
yeah.
yeah, it's there is when it comes to those other movies, which I can't wait. I'm very excited to go see The Fall Guy. I do want to go see it. But my guess is I'm going to watch it and it's going to wash over me, and then I'm never going to never think about it again. Which there is a place for those movies as well.
Oh yeah.
Um, but
That's
there.
most movies that I watch, I think.
Oh, sure. Yeah, they're in one year, out the other. That's not a problem. But at some point, they become too big where they can't fail, and if they do, it ends up costing plenty of people jobs. And I think that we're kind of seeing that with this next wave of Marvel movies. I think that
Mm,
people, I'm not a big Marvel guy overall, um, though I'm a huge Guardians fan, as you can tell. But I think that people were kind of when Endgame came out, people were kind of like, this is it, we're done, it's called Endgame, like this
right.
is great, we're calling it, this is where we're all calling it, and this is where we end up losing the hero that kind of started this franchise. And then they just kept going, and I think it's kind of for the best that they kept going, because it's now showing like, hey, people are kind of tired of these stories. And this is what happened
Mm,
with a lot of genres. If you look back, you see this is what happened to the Western, and they all kind of go in phases where they die a certain death and then they're parodied, and then after that someone comes back and tries to remake. It's kind of these cycles. So the tempo movie does need to die to a degree, but it's mainly so that other movies can survive. These $10 million movies, which were kind of killed in the when streaming kind of became more dominant. All of a sudden the DVD sale went away, and that's how the mid-budget movie kind of died, because they lost their second wind when it comes to making money. It used to be box office, and then you get your second box office, which is basically your DVD release, and that kind of
right.
changed things. But I feel like there's a chance to come back to those, especially with you see how good looking you can make a movie for $10 million or whatever. I will never get over The Shape of Water. I think cost 14 million, and Grown Ups 2 cost 80. And like I came up with a rule that if your movie cost six times more than that, you have to look at least 1/10 as good. And Grown Ups 2 doesn't pull that off. And so if you can make The Shape of Water with $14 million, you can make plenty of movies that are good for that budget range, and give more people jobs, and more movies get made, and more original stories get told. And I think that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. I like seeing the lower and mid budget films.
Mm.
I rarely go and watch. I only go see a big budget movie, at the drive-in. And
Yeah,
so
sure, sure.
um that's great. Okay, so anybody listening to this, where would you like to direct them? You said that a bunch of your movies are on Tubi, so I'll definitely link up to there. Anywhere else?
So yeah, Everwinter Night's playing on Tubi. If you want to watch Ice Patrol as well, our $2,000 feature we made 8 years ago, that is also playing on Tubi. It is a major slow burn. It means a lot to us. It's rough around the edges, but we love it. We're also playing on Amazon Prime for Everwinter as well, so definitely go check that out. All of our social medias, uh, Instagram, it's at Dreamscape Productions LLC. We also have the movies there, like Round underscore the underscore decay, and then Everwinter Night has it. And then I am director Adam Newman on Instagram as well. I have to specify that because there's 1,000. I'm not even the most famous Adam Newman from New Hampshire. So as a stand-up comedian who's got me beat right now. So but director Adam Newman on Instagram, and then I'm on Facebook and all that type of stuff. And truly, I don't know what your demographics are, but if there are people here that are looking to become filmmakers or are low budget filmmakers and want to talk and want to connect, I I cannot stress enough, like, please reach out to me. It really does mean a lot when that happens, and we like to share resources. And so many people in this industry are gatekeepers, and we despise it. We were just talking about this recently. We despise their gatekeepers. We are all independent filmmakers at this level who are desperately trying to get things made. We should be helping each other. When we all add our movies to the pool only gets stronger. So any of these people that want to reach out and chat or talk about horror stories from set, I'm more than willing to do. And especially if they're new filmmakers, I definitely suggest reaching out as well, so that I can tell you how awful they are, but at the same time, how you should always make them. So, yeah. Those are the best ways to reach me.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I definitely encourage anyone listening to do that. If this podcast can be anything, I don't want to try to be the Beatles of podcasts. I would love to be the Velvet Underground.
There you go.
of filmmaking podcasts, where it's like a dozen people listen and then they all go make movies.
I love that. I love that a lot. So yeah, hopefully that is the case. And yeah, because I love talking about this stuff, and finding like-minded people is almost as good as making a movie.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for talking with me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. And hopefully I can come back around for the next one. I'd love to talk about Round the Decay a little bit more.
Absolutely. Although, just very minor point, every time I read that title, my brain goes, did you mean Round the Twist? The horror comedy Australian children's show from the 90s?
Well, that'll be our next feature. We'll be doing an adaptation of that. There you go.
Oh, man.